Welcome to Meet the Masters of Insurance. I'm Lawrence Geller, the founder of For Advisors Only. This is the 25th of what we expect to be a great many webinars with Canadians who've dedicated their careers to learning the art and science of insurance sales and service. Webinars in this series are now scheduled through the end of this year, and more are being added to the schedule daily. Over the years, I've observed that every successful insurance agent who I've met has succeeded differently, even if they're in the same field, deal with similar clients, and even if they're related or in business together. This is what makes the sale and servicing of insurance one of the best careers that I can imagine. It's possible to become a success in our business with diligence, integrity, and experience. With this webinar series, we intend to prove that any type of person can succeed with time and hard, thoughtful work. Our goal is to create a video record for each of these masters of insurance, so that some of their expertise and experience will be available to anyone who'd like to learn from them. Today, we have Bob Gould with us, and I'm very pleased to introduce him. As anyone who heard my interview knows, Bob's father was one of my mentors, and Bob has been a seminal and very significant part of my life. Bob is a partner with Creaghan McConnell Gould. He helps business families to confront problems that are often avoided because a solution may seem impossible. For more than 30 years, he has supported families in resolving their challenges based on a special understanding of how a business affects family relationships. The confidence he offers families is rooted in a track record for removing barriers to a family's success. Bob is a graduate of the Institute for Preparing Heirs at Pepperdine University of California. And he also holds a certificate in Family Business Advising, CFBA, and a certificate in Family Wealth Advising, the CFWA, both from the Family Firm Institute in Boston. He and his wife, Shelley, have 3 adult children and live in Oakville, Ontario. Bob is dedicated to supporting one of Canada's most valuable resources, the country's top business families. For over 30 years, he has paid attention to the best practices that successfully support their unique ownership challenges, estate, succession, and exit planning. Bob has also supported many of Canada's best advisors as they assist these families. What Bob has learned is that the technical part of planning is so important to do thoughtfully, recognizing that it will continue to evolve as life changes. More importantly, however, is paying attention to what really matters to the family and how relationships can either support or undermine a business. My apologies. At CMG, the Creaghan McConnell Group, they pay attention to both the structure, the relationships, and how best to find the contingencies of tax and buyouts that are an inevitable part of the Canadian wealth story. Many advisors specialize in structure and taxes, or the relationship side of the equation. However, Bob and the Creaghan McConnell Group team are unique, as they have developed the sensibilities and expertise to navigate both areas at the same time. Truly a unique offering. By striking a balance between the two, families are better equipped to navigate life's challenges and to achieve their financial goals. As the overseer of the CMG Family Capital Services Division, Bob has carefully selected a team of highly trained professionals from across North America. He and his team focus on how relationships and financial planning affect the outcome the family is striving for. I'll be interviewing Bob. We have now booked interviews through the end of 2024, and new dates are being added daily. Good morning, Bob. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Lawrence. Good morning.
Bob, tell us, how did you get started in the insurance business?
Just 2 quick notes, if you don't mind. First of all, it's really weird to be interviewed by what I consider a lifetime mentor, you, Lawrence. It's sort of I expect to be in the other chair interviewing you. So this is a unique experience for me. And I think the other thing, hats off to you for setting this up and spearheading this initiative, because it's, I'm not speaking for myself, but the amount of knowledge and wisdom that can just slip away, with people's passing and retiring, I think this is awesome. So thank you for that. My in your start of your conversation here, you mentioned anybody can do it. Well, I'm proof anybody can do it. But I had a very I would say uninteresting start. I graduated from university. I didn't get any job offers. My dad, as you mentioned, was in the insurance business, the disability business, very successful. My sister was a very successful agent with London Life. And I didn't get a job offer. So my dad said, well, give it a shot. And they took a chance on me, I'm sure from the pedigree before me, not because of me. And so I was lucky enough to get placed in John McConnell's office, which is Marty McConnell, my business partner today, and Peter Creaghan, it's Marty's dad. And Marty was in that office, and my sister was in that office, and several great achievers over the years were in that office. So I was surrounded by talent. Like it was, if I failed, it would be really shame on me.
Bob, you did very well, and I think your father thought that you were doing well, and then you left London Life. Why did that happen?
Well, there was at that time, there were a number of very senior, very accomplished insurance people in the insurance company agency system, and they were thinking of doing different things, trying different things, and it didn't really fit all those areas of exploration that they wanted to follow. Didn't really fit in that structure, and couldn't necessarily be supported by the insurance company. And understandably, right? They have a mandate, and they were following it. So as that was happening, my dad had talked to my sister about a firm called Creaghan Planning, and that if you're going to make a leap in your career, this might be a really good next chapter. And so she went there, again, to expand her unique area of focus. And it wasn't like it was better than London Life. It was just more appropriate for what she wanted to do. And I followed shortly after. And so that's where I met you, and I met all those other great characters that we'll talk about as we go. So I think it was more of an entrepreneurial mindset calling, that we wanted to try some things and experiment. And that's what the great thing about the insurance business is that you can do it a million different ways. You just have to find the one that works for you.
Where did you find your clients in the early days, Bob?
Well, the first, I got an office with John McConnell's office, didn't have any windows. It was the old supply cupboard. And so they cleaned out the supplies, and I was in there, and I had, 2 or 3 people that I could call. Didn't have a very large natural market. And the first business owner I called, I gave him the old story that nobody has the corner on good ideas. And, we've got these ideas. I'm at London Life. And he said, London Life. He said, do you know John McConnell? And I said, yeah. He said, well, he's my agent. So that was one of my first calls. So my natural market evaporated quite quickly. That gentleman actually happened to own a garage that fixed my car. So I had to search for them. And in the beginning, we were buying wedding counselor leads, where young couples would be going to a convention on all the different things you need from the wedding, and they'd sign up for some information, and then I would buy those leads, and then I would call them and say, oh, congratulations, you're getting married. And so my work day, although it started at 8 in the morning, it really started at 4 or 5 o'clock every day, and I had 3 meetings a day. One starting at 4 or 5, one at 7, and one sometimes at 9, because that's when these people had time, because they're all young and working. So in the beginning, it was that, and then we got a little more sophisticated, and we started to buy these Dun and Bradstreet, the odd business owner, and so you did a lot of cold calling, because you didn't have the ability to prospect, really, no natural market, and no referral base. As you were building the clientele, it was tough. Back then, when we did ask for a prospect, which we tried to a lot, it was Lawrence, I look back on it now and I can't believe I did it. It was, who do you know that I could talk to, you know, and basically sell insurance to? And that's like saying to somebody, you know, who do you know that wants to, like, who would you like to refer me to that I could pour poison down their throat, right? And so we had to develop a different sort of skill set, and that's what we've done over the years. One of the main things was to pay attention in those early discussions about who they were talking about in their relationships. It was actually fairly simple once we were alerted to it by senior people, that if you pay attention to the conversation, they will be bringing up names, their accountant, their lawyer, their friend, their, you know, somebody that their dad knows that owns a business or whatever. So we would just pencil those down and we started to ask them about them. And what we found very early is that if you bring somebody a name, they're more likely and much more open to help you meet them than if you ask them to come up with one. And we can theorize about the psychology of it, but it seemed to work much better.
How did that approach go then? So you would say, you mentioned Lawrence a while back. Tell me about him, or what did you do?
I actually can't remember what I said back then, but so I'd be making it up, which is not a bad idea. But anyway, I'll go with what we say now, which is, I think, very simple. We often don't mention, oh, you mentioned that person. We say, listen, we think you might know this person. We think this person might be somebody that we could help. You know, do you know them? How well? Oh, of course I know them. Yeah. They never remember mentioning them. And I'm not trying to be, you know, manipulative here, but they really never remember saying these people's names. And so we asked them if we think they'd be good candidates, and we talk about that a bit. And then we say, well, would you mind helping us with an introduction? And then they're very, very supportive in that.
So, Bob, as I recall, you joined Creative Planning, and you were certainly one of the younger people in the branch. Your older sister there, which must have been a little bit intimidating, and a brother-in-law. But you moved up pretty quickly. You started to deal with businesses. How did that happen?
Well, Lawrence, you only paid attention to me when I started to have some success. I was there a long time before you would talk to me. So let me tell you how I saw it. So you guys were all successful. The reason why I went to Creative Planning, to that firm, was I made a decision that 3, 4 o'clock meetings and 7 o'clock meetings and 9 o'clock meetings were not something that I wanted to continue with. Okay. So I built up a little bit of success, you know, selling 150 policies a year, you know, lots of activity. And I really was intrigued about the business owner, because I always wanted to be some sort of a business owner. I didn't know how. Turns out today, I really don't have the skill set, all the skills you need to be a business owner, which we'll talk about later. But I was intrigued with business owners and their flexibility and the creativity, and quite honestly, their financial success. So when I joined Creative Planning, entrepreneurial shop, and they were willing, because of my little bit of history I had, to put me on a draw for a year. And I didn't tell Sheldon or Mel this, but I went, this is my chance to change markets. I'm moving to the business market, and I'm moving to working in the days. And I didn't make a sale for a year. Had some pretty tough conversations with Mel and Sheldon. They hung in there with me. They saw the activity that was happening, and they knew these cases took time. But I was really frustrated, really, really frustrated, because to me, I felt like charity from them, that they were supporting me financially. But then we Mel and I struck some deals. We got some deals done, and that kind of started fueling a different type of activity. And I worked very closely with Mel, as you know, in those early years. I dragged him to meetings that he did not want to go to. And I encourage anybody that's being asked to mentor not to forget those early years and how many people did help us. And to give back, I think, is really important.
As I recall, about that time, Bob, you also met everybody's mentor, Joe Dickstein.
Joe Dickstein. Yeah, Joe Dickstein. So there was another guy I latched onto. So John McConnell, I dragged him everywhere. John gave me some advice one time that I'm not going to put on this video, but it was really bad advice, and we both laugh at it today. So, you know, you try things, right? But John was extremely helpful in setting me in a direction of activity. Mel was helpful because he showed me how to have a conversation with a business person and not show up with my agenda first, show up with their agenda, meet them where they are. And then this guy, Joe Dickstein, walks in, and, you know, you know, as I got to know Joe over the years, he went from being 9 feet tall to whatever he was. Okay. That's the way I looked at him in the beginning. But I dragged Joe to about 50 meetings, literally. And I could open up cases, and I didn't care really about closing them because I liked opening. And we got in a car accident, Joe and I, on the way back from a meeting. And he said, Bob, let's go back to your office. It wasn't a bad car accident. Let's go back to your office. Let's have a chat. And I talked to Joe about this later, and he doesn't remember it because that's one of the things in relationships. You don't know how you're landing on somebody else. It's very important to be in tune with that. Joe dismantled me in my office, the office you and I used to share. Okay. And I was just taken apart in pieces. And I fully respect what he did. I don't think he knew he was doing that, but it really taught me I've got to do things differently. I really have to pay attention to different things. And so I started to think, team, how can we work together? I have these massive inefficiencies and deficiencies. How do I fill them? And then Joe had Joeisms. Like, I still use today in almost every meeting Joe's Einstein line. Do you remember that Einstein line? Lawrence, does it ring a bell?
Joe had several Einstein lines.
Yeah, okay. Well, this one that I use often is when we get into a difficult situation with a business owner and I'm struggling a little bit in the conversation, I kind of stop and say, because they're wanting to know, like, what solution do you have for me in most cases, because they're busy. Like, okay, enough of the, crap. What can you do for me? And we know not to resist that because it's a bit of a trap and it doesn't really help them. So Joe had this line. He asked Einstein once, if the world was going to end in an hour, what would he spend that time doing? And apparently Einstein said, I'd spend 59 minutes defining them. And to this day, when I'm in trouble, I put that out on the table. Everybody sits back and chuckles, and it changes the mood in the room 100% of the time. So I also learned early that, and later when I look back, that working with those mentors and splitting cases, I split a few cases with Joe. And was I happy about splitting them? Yeah, but not always. I'm splitting and I'm young and I'm trying to put my financial picture together. But when I look back now, I'm still using his techniques and ideas, and I'm not splitting the case with Joe anymore. So it's an incredible long lasting impact. If you split a few cases with somebody that's can be a mentor to you, like, don't worry about the split because you'll carry it through the rest of your career.
We've talked a lot during these interviews about learning from others and not reinventing the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big, and Mel always talked about that. That's a big part of it, is when you learn from others, you learn the ways that they've learned to do things and what they've learned from others.
Yeah.
One of Joe's other Einstein comments was that when he spoke with Dr. Feynman about Dr. Einstein, Feynman said, well, the difference between Einstein and everybody else is that everybody can concentrate for a minute at a time. Dr. Einstein can concentrate for 5 minutes at a time. Mm-hmm. Bob, you have one of those, that same ability. You are one of the best prospectors I've ever met. Mm-hmm. You say you love opening cases. Maybe that's the reason. How did you develop that ability to prospect, to find prospects that fit the type of client you're looking for?
Yeah. Well, I think I'm in another type of Einstein because I can concentrate on 30,000 things at once for 1 second. So that's just another type of thinking. Um, I the prospecting thing, right from the beginning, it was drilled into us at London Life. It was activity, and this isn't a knock on London Life, but Dan Sullivan, which we learned a ton from as well, and basically 95% of what we've taken from somebody else and formed it into our process. Okay, so it might look different, but it's really how we apply it. And they, Dan Sullivan would tell us early on that the London Life system is a guaranteed way to take a person and get them up to, a couple $100,000 of income. And I'm talking years ago, to be successful financially, but it's not necessarily going to take them, to be an entrepreneur, a business owner, and things like that. So I think the early John McConnell told me only losers open their mail first. That's the first thing they do in the morning. So this is why I don't do emails to this day. I don't look at them because John McConnell's on my shoulder saying, don't open those emails. Don't open that mail. That's not what you need to pay attention to. Go out and prospect. So that was drilled into me early. And what I also found fascinating was it was a way for people for me to acknowledge and understand that people felt I was valuable, because they could write a check for the insurance and the insurance was good and it helped them and thank you very much. But to give a referral to somebody is a very special move. And in some respects, it's like giving them a monopoly on that topic. In other words, in their life, they're not going to refer 8 insurance people to that one person. Okay. They're really going to, they're going to refer 1 insurance person. And so it was kind of like, wow, this is a very special gift. And I like that feeling. I like the feeling of acknowledgement. I like the feeling that I've had an impact, that they would do this. It was one of the measuring sticks that I had. Am I doing a good job? Okay. And then because of that was ingrained in us and in me, we started to get more sophisticated. And when I joined Creaghan McConnell Group, they had a phenomenal system in place. They had this database that they built, and they were connecting all these relationships. So they would come back from these meetings and they would do a dictation, and it would trap all these people. And Debbie Reynolds was in the back office connecting these people in the database. And so that when you went out to the meeting that you were going to ask for referrals, there was a sheet of paper in your file, Lawrence, with 8 to 10 people that we pretty much knew that person knew and would have a favorable, like would have a credibility in those prospects' eyes. So I looked at this and went, oh my God, what can I do with this? This is like, this is easy now, right? And so, I joined Peter and Marty and Frank for all kinds of reasons. But when I saw this platform, I went, this is amazing. And so then we started to set goals. So we have lots of goals in our company. But one of the goals is prospecting. And I think from 2000 that I joined CMG, we had set, 20 referrals a quarter to whatever our target market was. And we religiously measured them, talked about them, felt bad if we didn't hit the target. Then we started to bonus our staff based on that number. Now, the staff can't really do a lot about it, but they sure got on our butts, along the quarter. So the organization started to get a feel for prospecting was a key cultural piece. And then what got us up the ladder was Frank made us put a whole bunch of money away so that we could make the shift. So my first shift was to leave London and go to get into a day job instead of a night job, right? Well, creative planning financed me for that year. Well, Frank wasn't going to finance. He's saying, you guys got to put the money together and then we'll make leaps. And we went from $10 million to $20 million net worth. Thought it was going to be impossible. And then to 50, and then to 100. And not being arrogant, but we're hunting blue whales now, the billion-dollar families. And we couldn't have done that unless we had the staying power, because every time you move up, you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to go dry for a while on sales. So that was a key thing. And then the other key thing was that caused the prospecting is that Frank also insisted that we spend 35% of our revenue back in the business religiously. We buy stuff, honestly, I felt we didn't even need to get through the budget, a little bit like a government would, but it was important because we were investing in ourselves and our systems, and we would try things like, these crazy prospecting processes, and hiring people to run this was part of that.
So, Bob, teams have been an important part.
Oh, Lawrence, just before you go on, are you disappointed yet in our conversation?
Not yet.
Okay, not yet. Nice. No, just kidding. Just wanted to do a check.
No, you're doing fine.
Okay.
But teams have been an important part of your development over time, it seems. As I recall back when we first started to share an office in Burlington, when we left Creaghan McConnell, you were already investing in your business, though. Back then, you hired an office manager for two of us, two assistants, two of us, and an office manager, which was interesting. But at that time, you were prospecting for successful professionals, really, and successful business people. And I remember when you found your first whale, who was a real estate developer. How did that progression go? You went from dentists and people like that and accountants to a real estate developer.
Yeah, that was that's because of my upbringing. My dad was in the disability business as long as I remember. And so it was sort of in our language, and we heard about it and saw it. And so I had this amazing resource, my dad and all his staff. And then, when I met you and you were working with my dad, I just had so much talent around me. It would be ridiculous not to take advantage of it. And so we started, who buys disability insurance? Dentists, doctors, accountants, lawyers. And we learned a lot. And in 1988, I was asked to speak at MDRT on this topic. And thank God my dad wrote the speech. I just read it. Okay. But anyway, I was there. And so starting to work with these dentists and doctors were sort of like quasi business people. However, they're not. And I'm not knocking that profession, and I'm not knocking anybody that works in that field. It just wasn't quite what I was looking for. So you and I did a ton of work together. So lots of disability, created locums for dentists, all that kind of stuff. And I think what I learned most about working in that world is that they have a lot of defenses up to keep them away from salespeople. They had people guarding the phone, people not letting people in. So we had to be very creative on how we got in there. But at that time, even after that success, I realized that I wanted to lean more to entrepreneurs. So I went through that phase, and it was really the disability business that took me there because that was the market.
And then we split up. I moved up here, and you moved. But you stayed on your own, and then you joined up, as I recall, with Phil Bullock, and then with Peter and Marty.
Lawrence, I didn't know we split up. Oh my God, we did. We split up, did we? Just kidding.
I stopped paying a share of the rent.
Okay. No, for sure. Keep going. Sorry to.
No, please. So during that time, there must have been a lot of challenges internally for you because there were big changes happening. You must have had conversations with Shelley about this because your future you were changing the way your future path was going to go. How did that go? Well,
it was a rocky road, as you know, and I somebody asked me a while ago. I said this to you before, Lawrence. Somebody said, "Would you do anything different if you look back?" And I honestly wouldn't. because I don't know what got me here entirely. However, there's one thing that I said I would have worked on me earlier. I would have worked on me earlier. And you were there and you witnessed this crazy lunatic type entrepreneur guy. And I appreciate you hanging in there with me. But one of the things that really clicked was a comment my dad made before he passed away. He said, if you're going to go and work somewhere, look at the oldest person in the company. And if that is inspiring and that's where you'd like to be, then this is a pretty good opportunity. And what I did was I looked at a lot of older agents and I didn't like what I saw. And there's nothing wrong. They were on their own and there was nothing to really necessarily pass on. And it felt like they were going to have to retire one day because as Joe, would say, when I would bring him to meetings, he'd say something like, you're lucky that Bob's here because people tell me I shouldn't buy green bananas, right? You know what I mean? Because I'm at the other end of the game. So this started to click in my mind to look at healing. And I was in a study group with Peter Creaghan, Marty McConnell, Phil Belek, Denny Hop, bunch of characters. The first 5 years of that was just an excuse to get away and golf and have too many drinks. But then we got serious. And I saw what they were building and I saw what others were building in their partnerships. And I realized I got to have a team. And we tried that on my own. And I realized I don't have all the pieces to pull this off. I just don't. So one day, Peter made an offer to have a conversation, Peter Creaghan, and said, Bob, this is, you've got some skill. We're doing this thing. Wonder if we could put some things together. And so we talked about it. And we did a leap of faith, man. We did a leap of faith. And to my great, I would say, appreciation of those guys, they hung in there with me in the early days. And we have put something special together. But we've had to work at it. It's like a great marriage. It just doesn't happen. So we've really, really had to work at it. And so I looked at it and said, that's the direction I think I need to go. So I tried a few things on my own. They didn't work. And I found a system that really had the pieces.
For those people who didn't know Frank Creaghan, he was really a law unto himself. But he was an insurance person who had changed into a real businessman. He had left the London Life office. He had bought a building for his family business, the Creaghan McConnell Group. He brought in his son, his daughter, his son-in-law, and tried to turn it into a real business instead of an insurance office. And that's what Bob is talking about. And Sheila Creaghan, who was Frank's wife, was really a business person. She ran the office and she ran everything. And she's greatly missed, and as is Frank. Bob, so you joined Creaghan McConnell, and now have 2.5 A-type, triple A-type people, one quadruple A-type person, Frank, and Marty, who is a lovely guy, but is not as quite as much an A-type as Peter or you. There must have been some conflicts. How did you resolve those?
Oh, there was there still is. Okay. And the conflicts are now, honestly, they create incredible opportunity. Back then, they didn't feel like it. Okay. Thank God Marty was in the mix, because Marty has played this role of, I come into a hot situation with the fight to be right. Now, I don't do that with my clients, but it's just my natural move in the world outside of that. And that's what I had to work on. And so we brought coaches in, and that we worked on everybody. But Marty was that, I would say, that absorber of, let's not fight to be right. Let's just kind of slow this down and have a conversation, put the perspectives on the table. So he really played an important role. And I didn't appreciate it in the beginning as much because I wasn't observing and aware of it. But yeah, without that key ingredient, I don't know how far we would have got. So that's important. The other thing is that Frank and I actually got along really well after we started to understand each other, because he was coming from an entirely different place than I was. So we had to kind of get there. And one of the really neat things was Frank, up until the day he passed away, would say prospecting is everything. Now, we know it's not everything because underwriting could be everything and closing a deal could be everything, you know what I mean? But to Frank, it was everything. So I had this natural affinity with this guy that said that's everything, right? And it's an important piece, obviously. But he and I got along. He and I went out on a Christmas run. We used to give out, Frank found this place in Georgetown. I'm not going to give you the name of the chocolate company because we've got a priority on it, we've got our own monopoly, but they're unbelievable. Everybody loves them. And so we'd go out and deliver them and give a book, some sort of book that we thought was relevant. And for fun, Frank and I said, let's see how many prospects we can get in this 2 weeks in December by popping in and saying hi. And we got 75 referrals in 2 weeks. Now, both Peter and Marty are sitting back in the office going, okay, well, that's great, guys, but how many are quality? How many do we really want to go after? But that's the type of fun Frank and I would have, in challenging each other. And then the other part of this was Dan Sullivan early on started to talk about this concept of unique ability. And you know that, Lawrence, and we all do something that other people look at and go, oh my God, how do you do that? How? And to us, it's like breathing. What do you mean? This is just what I do. But to others, it feels really unique. So we got in our minds from Dan, we should build a unique ability company, a company that has, so when we hired those team members, we weren't filling just functions. We were filling somebody that brought a unique ability that we didn't have, that would be additive to our overall picture. So now we have 35, 40 people employed in our company. And I can tell you, for the most part, it's been based on that concept of how do we get them and how do we move them into their unique ability. And that's what Frank did all the way through his retirement. He just kept narrowing his area of focus. And that's where Peter, Marty, and I are at now.
So let's talk about how Creaghan McConnell has developed over the years. Because when you joined in 1999, it was still beginning to become what it is, but it was only beginning. Mm-hmm. And so you moved very quickly from an insurance shop to hiring people, to hiring, as I recall, an accountant to come in, people who were outsiders, mm-hmm. weren't insurance people. Mm-hmm. Why? How did they add to the practice?
Well, I think, when we looked around, and Peter's done a great job of this, kind of scouting out other people that have done this, John Nicola, Joe Powell, people have built these organizations. And it was really mother of necessity. Like, what did we need? What did we think we need? Well, if we're working with business owners and their accountants and lawyers, we need to understand shareholders agreements. We need to know how to fund them. We need to understand, how the capital dividend account and all that kind of stuff factors in and how it can smoothen the road for an insurance sale and really show its insurance's benefits and value. So we concentrated on, I would say, the planning part, the technical planning part, where a lot of people, and again, it's a choice, spend a lot of their time and focus on bringing people in that were really good insurance people, like Joe with Jeff Shattuck, right? Like he was an actuary, and way back when, I think he was, or something like that, but he was a real knowledgeable insurance person. And we kind of felt pretty good about our insurance acumen. Today, though, we realize in the market we are and the level of sophistication, we have actuaries, young actuaries. But I think our sort of hurdles were with the accountants and the business owner. And you don't need insurance. You got lots of assets. So we dove into the planning pieces and got really familiar with what accountants and what lawyers put together. And we quickly realized their job is to build the structure, but not to fund anything, right? And so that's where we paid our attention. We wanted to raise our credibility with those professionals.
You talked about coaching and you talked about Danny Sullivan. Both, like again, coaching. Has that been a big part of the practice? Because you've been developing, you've had conflicts. How have the coaches played a part?
Well, yeah. So this is part of that thing that I can't emphasize enough, that spending money on you. Us going to Dan Sullivan, like Dan Sullivan, it's a 3-year program that we took for 25 years. Okay. And so Dan would always laugh and say, I love people with deep pockets and that are slow learners. Okay. That was his favorite client. So, investing in yourself is the thing to do. You can buy IT and everything else, but I think in this world today, we're all caught up with artificial intelligence. What about real intelligence? What about our intelligence? What about nurturing that? I think we can still stay in the game, but it's not sort of the thing sometimes to do. So we caught on early that these people were very valuable, and we caught on that they could even help our families. So I remember we brought some coaches in to help us untie some knots in our partnership. And I found this guy at the Pepperdine thing. Frank found the Pepperdine thing. We went, we met this guy, very esoteric, lives in a tree forest in Grass Valley, California. And he came in and we spent a lot of time with him, and he dismantled us, showed us who we were, how we were showing up, how we could get back to who we really are. But we had all these defense mechanisms and weirdness going on. And when we got a taste of that, we knew we got to stay on this. When we get a challenge and we want to get the next breakthrough, let's get somebody to help us. So we have a culture group right now out of the States that's helping us do work with us individually and our culture. And we're very proud that when we bring these coaches to our families to help us with their issues, we eat our cooking. Every single one of them we've hired and work with. So we're not bringing somebody in that, you should do this, right? You should do this. We can bring that in and say, these people can help because here's how they helped us in our business and in our family business. So coaching's been a major investment. Millions and millions of dollars have been spent, and it hasn't produced. It's produced way more value than the money, but not everything worked really well. And I think everybody has a best before date. If you want to keep learning and growing, sometimes your coaches need to be traded or set aside for a while, bring some new people in.
I remember your brother-in-law saying to me once, you have to go on a few dates before you get married. And I've said that ever since. That sounds like what you're doing. You're going on dates with your coaches, the people who you might refer to your clients. But your practice has become quite different, though. It seems to me that each of you at Creaghan McConnell has a unique ability, as you just said. And you're not all doing the same things. How did that develop?
Well, your unique ability is sort of your unique ability. It's more or less uncovering it. It's not creating it, in our opinion. It's how do we get rid of all the crap around you and let it shine through? Okay, that's what it's like the statue of David. Remember what he said? He chipped away all the crappy parts of the marble. David was inside already. So that's I think what the unique ability is. And so that it's there. We need to release it. And Lawrence, I forgot your question.
How did you develop your roles at Creaghan McConnell?
Okay, so once we started to get in tune what our unique ability was, and there's ways to do that. Oh, well then, man, you should do that, right? Like that's really where you get energy and you love it. I don't like that so much. I don't get a lot of energy there. So we started trading, things. And Marty's unique ability is he has the patience. Well, of course, because he had to work with Peter, Frank, and me. So he's got beyond patience, and not just quiet, pretense patients. He has effective patients. So this is a unique thing. So when we get into all that rough stuff around, you know, kind of closing the deal and getting all that stuff lined up, and it's quite heated, that's not where Peter and I want to spend a lot of time. And it shows to the client and it shows to the advisors. So that's not effective. So we've started to really be in tune with what we love to do and where we're most effective. And with our next gen, because we're going to go another 50 years, we're working with families already, 5 generations, Lawrence. It's unbelievable, right? Since Frank started, and we've continued. So the next generation, what we're instilling is pay attention to what matters. Pay attention to what we're paying attention to. But you've got to do it in your style. Don't mimic us. And I never mimicked Joe Dickstein. You know, I got a good size schnoz, but it was not as big as his. So I was not going to imitate it. I didn't want to lose my hair early. You know what I mean? So it was right, Lawrence. Well, you got the same amount you had when I met you, so you're holding strong. You know, it's not about imitation. It's about what do they pay attention to? What is Joe? So we're helping our next generation do it your way. Find the way that works for you, but pay attention to what is important at CMG. And if you pay attention to that, you'll have a long-term life here. If you don't want to pay attention to what CMG pays attention to, then we'll help you find another career path. So that's how we're developing.
There are 2 next generations that you're talking about, though. The next gen of your clients and the next gen of your own business, your family. So you and Peter have children in the business. Marty, not yet, as I recall.
Marty has 2 of his children in our company.
Oh, do they? Does he?
Yeah, and I have Alex is in our company, but he's in the prospecting side, so he's not frontline advising. He's ahead of that machine in the prospecting side, helping everybody be good prospectors. He's like Frank Jr. You know, keeping everybody on it.
Right. Kate, because Kate is part of the.
Kate's an advisor. Yeah, very effective. Yeah.
So how? I mean, you're dealing with the founder generation, second gen, 3rd gen, 4th gen, 5th gen, from what you're describing. What role does 2nd gen at CMG play in that?
Well, I don't know, somewhere around 60, 58, 60, I ended up being the old guy in the room. And all before that, I was the young guy. Okay. So I'm looking at this. I don't know. I think it was around that age, but it was like a light switch. And so, you know, you're sitting with people and you're trying to convince them of a long-term relationship. And I don't have a lot in common with a 32-year-old, other than we have a lot in common to discuss. But in terms of their life and what they're going through, I don't want to hear about diapers. I don't want to hear about all the sleepless nights. Okay. My lab goes to sleep at the end of my bed. It's done. Right. And so, but the next gen, they really, really need that continuity. They're going to go find them if we don't provide them. Okay. And so when we were younger, 30, 40, 50, we could float between the senior gen, the leading gen, and the next gen. But now we're at this stage of our life. It's more difficult to get down to those lower. We can still add value, Lawrence. It's not that you're useless. It's just, you know, we're not as appealing as we once were. Okay. And so that next gen is really filling the continuity conversation, building the relationships, understanding them. And one of our really great clients said to me the other day, he's 40 years old, 3rd generation, and they're cleaning house on their advisors, lawyers, accountants, all going. And I'm thinking, are we next? Right? Are we next? And the thing that he said to me, and I didn't ask him, but he said, you know, Bob, I just want you to know, we're not thinking of replacing you guys because you have next gens. But he said, the main reason we're working with you and continuing is you always made room at the table for our voice with our parents. You always. Counsel lawyers tend to look at their client as the check writer. There's a lot of clients that you have to pay attention to if you're working in this type of organization like a family business.
CMG, more than almost any insurance practice I know, is a holistic practice.
Mhm.
Can you discuss that?
Yeah, I don't use the word holistic because everybody else does. It's a great word. The word we use, you said it earlier today, we pay attention to what matters to the family, not what they want to get done, not their goals. Yes, we pay attention to that. You pay your tax. You fund your tax bill with life insurance, not just because you have a tax bill, because something else matters that this is going to get in the way of if you don't manage this tax bill properly. And it may be the continuation and perpetuation of you being able to do business. It may be your legacy of giving philanthropically, and the business feeds that. And so these disruptions in paying tax, we really have to pay attention. But there's something else that matters. You do stuff, Lawrence, I do stuff because we're trying to take care of something or somebody. And if we can tune into that, right, I think that's the definition of holistic work, is getting to what matters to these people. And that's the Joe Dickstein broad concept right there, right? So I think if you actually stick to that, these very wealthy people, they sense the other. They sense when you're selling your agenda over theirs right out of the gate. They're too wise, been around the block too many times. So yeah.
I don't know a lot of billionaires. You certainly know more than I do. But it seems to me that at a certain level, you don't need insurance. You don't need most things. You have them. It's like buying somebody who has everything a birthday present. The chances are they bought it for themselves first. How do you move from the need to the want at that level?
Yeah, well, again, if you zero in on what matters, you're not talking about insurance. Okay. So once you connect at that level, you have a different thing going on in that relationship. But earlier on, how we did it was very sharp. Dan loved it. We would go meet a very wealthy guy and we would write out his will financially and then write out his assets, his net worth. Okay. And lo and behold, you don't need insurance. You've got enough assets to take care of your obligations in your will. What do you think of that? And they'd sit back and go, thank you. Because all these other insurance people are telling me I need insurance. Okay. I was hoping to avoid you my whole life, you know, Mr. Gould. And now that you're here, so we did that literally with so many guys, and they'd say, oh, okay, great. And then I said, but you know, your executors need your help. What do you mean? I said, well, I think it's only prudent for you to tell your executors which assets you should sell to cover that tax bill. So let's point those out. Don't you think that makes sense, Mr. Business or Mrs. Business Person? Oh yeah, you know, no, I get that. Yeah, that's probably, I don't want them to sell the wrong thing. So as you go through the list, you see the beads of sweat coming up on their brow. They don't want to sell anything. Okay. So we started to dismantle these roadblocks that we were putting in front of ourselves, like trying to tell somebody they need insurance that's way wealthier than me. I tried to place some insurance on a guy once with, I can't remember the life insurance company, but he asked to see the financial statement. And his net worth was more than the financial statement, but it was the cheapest premium, right? So you learn from these great wealthy people, you know, what works and what doesn't. But to attack them and tell them they need something, I don't think is the way to go. But that's just our opinion.
You're dealing with a lot of people who must have tremendous egos.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with that?
Well, we've learned a very interesting skill through all of our coaching of how to deal with the power gradient. They have all the power in their lives virtually, and they get very little feedback because it's not safe. I'm the VP. I'm supposed to go to the owner and tell him where he's messing up. You know, I've got kids in college. I got a mortgage. It's not safe. It's safe for us, but we do it privately. And we allow them to understand that they created this operating system in the family that they're frustrated with. It's somewhere, but they're not to be judged because we know their intentions were honorable, but they own because they built it because they had all the power. not to be judged, but you've got to own this. And that conversation is incredibly effective. I saw Joe do it way back when, in a slightly different way. And it is an incredible thing to watch somebody when you say, you've created this, you own it, but I'm not judging you, nor should you be judged. It's a release. It opens up a new conversation. Okay, versus you've screwed up with your family, you've done the wrong things, blah, 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 blah. So that's how we manage the ego. Work with them individually, meet them where they are, and don't tell them they need something, right? These are all things that work against you, I think.
When your significant clients call you and ask a question, ask for something, ask for advice, what do they ask of us?
What are they asking us about? What I'm really most proud of is they're asking our advice on a lot of things. Sure, they're asking for what are the cash values, what are this, what are that. But when they ask us for our advice, I'm struggling with this. I'm talking to my daughter, my son. I'm dealing with this issue. We've worked hard to get there, but that's the most rewarding thing. And the more our clients look at us as people that they can get good advice from, the insurance is just the thing they got to do. We're great providers. There are other good providers. It's important. Their portfolios are very important to them. Don't get me wrong. One of the ones that Marty works with closest, he said, 3 things I look after: my real estate, my company, and my insurance portfolio. Those are the 3 things that he's concerned about. But really, the questions they would ask are, I'm struggling. I'm struggling on a topic. My accountant can't help me. My lawyer can't help me. And they're generally around relationships. They're generally around, how do I know it's going to work for my next gen? How do I get this kid into track, launched? I'm struggling with this. Where do I go? What kind of conversations can I have? And also, have we covered, do we have the right structures? Could you give us your eyes? Because they know we don't come in and bulldoze things. They may prepare and do something, and they'll have us take a look, and we're not there, criticizing and dismantling. So we take a very soft approach. We listen a lot. And I think that's why they're drawn to ask us certain things.
If you were giving someone new, whether they were young people coming into the business or young people who you knew, who came to you and said, what advice would you give?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say?
Well, I'm doing it now. 2 guys in Vancouver, brothers. I told them that I think after spending a lot of time with them, they need to join a firm. They're on their own right now. They're wailing away, and you can do that. Or you could take a shortcut, go and work at a reputable firm and get some support. Like Kate worked at RBC, and then she joined the Freedom Office and learn some things before you become an entrepreneur. Now, some can just launch and do it. Don't get me wrong. But most, I think, we're missing that agency system. We're missing that nurturing and development stage, and it's not there. And when you get to my age, I don't want to babysit people. I don't want to go through all that conversation. So, but they need it, right? So we're providing it in different ways. I like to mentor, but I don't want to do it on a day-to-day basis. So, you go out and get those coaches, like there are actual insurance coaches out there, right? Hire one, work with them, help them, go through your problems, your issues with them. They're independent. You don't have to worry about making mistakes. They're there to help you. So it's all around getting help and being with the right people. My dad had a saying, you lie down with dogs, you wake up with fleas, right? So look for people that are doing it reputably, ask for help, get support. And most important, I think you need to team up today. I think it's the rare breed that's going to be able to do it on their own. And I think those days are gone, quite honestly.
So look for people with unique abilities you don't have?
Absolutely. All day long. Yeah.
And what sort of advice would you give people about looking for clients?
Well, I would pick my market, and I'd understand why. I'd understand my why about that market. So you mentioned our national treasures. We are very clear at CMG that these 300 or 400 families out there in Canada are the backbone of our country. And they know when we meet them and we tell them that we believe it. This isn't a commercial. That what gets me up out of bed in the morning on days I don't want to do it. So pick a market and really get clear on your why. Why am I trying to help that market? Never mind what they're going to do for you. Why are you trying to help that market? And if you do that and you honestly take that approach and you do the activity, the numbers, I can't see how you're not going to be successful, because if you're sincere about helping them, you'll find the people. You'll go and get the right resource. You'll learn the right thing to help them, which is what we did.
And does that help you with competition then? If another agency or group comes into competition?
Lawrence, part of the reason why we built this thing is I don't like competition. I hate it. Okay. And so we're trying to build something that is unique so that we don't have a lot of competition. And another thing my dad told me, he said, Bob, all you want out of life is an unfair advantage. Okay. That's all you need. So that's what we're trying to create. And everybody else has got a unique practice too. There are people that do what we do some of the things we do. But the way we do it, exactly, nobody. And we don't do it the way they do it, right? That's the thing that's so unique about this business, is that we all pay attention to things slightly different. And the insurance product, I mean, are you kidding me? There's only a couple insurance products, right? I mean, how can we differentiate there? Disability, you and I used to be able to differentiate by going through the contract. And they all start duplicating the contracts. And then you were the one that came up with, well, guess what? Who can get the claim paid? Who's actually going to, right? And that became the differentiator. So, that's where what you have to keep looking for.
Thank you, Bob. This has been fascinating. Even for me, I've known you for quite some time. I am and have been for many, many years impressed with Creaghan McConnell and what you've done. You are a unique firm. It seems to me that your competition is often the big banks, and they're bringing in cookie cutters for clients who don't need cookies. And it seems to me, and I appreciate that dealing with people at a very high level requires a high level of dedication and understanding. But it must be difficult for you because those people play at a very high level too. And I've seen a lot of people who try to do business with them burn out, trying to spend as much money as their clients. What's your attitude about that?
Oh, that's a great one. I don't have dinners, lunches, golf games, vacations with any of my clients. We rarely do it. It's just a choice. And I think because we get into some very interesting places with them, we don't show up at their church or their synagogue or their favorite restaurant and they go, oh my God, I've told those guys everything. And look, they know my friends, they know, you know what I mean? So we're a quiet company and they can talk to us and they don't see us around a lot. So our money has been spent on our practice, not marketing in that sense, right? And how to prospect and how to develop. And so we tell families that look, like we're going to help you. We're going to do a lot of great work, but we may not show up to everything in that regard. And so that's just been our choice. So we haven't spent the money in building our business that way, Lawrence. We've spent it another way.
I guess that's the definition of a truly professional practice.
Yeah. And lastly, we've got a process now that Marty and Peter really put a lot of time into, that our families are connected to this annual type review at a very high level. It's formed part of their planning. Their accounts and lawyers want to be a part of it. They're supporting it. So we've found a way to integrate into their world as part of their ongoing planning, which has really allowed things to get interesting.
That's a good way to start, to end, Bob. I wish you well for the remainder of your career and for your families, yours and Peter and Marty's families' careers. You built something remarkable, and I'm sure that it has a place well into the future as needs become far more complex for these families. Next week, we're going to move back into the group insurance world, and we'll have Gord Cowan, who will be interviewed by Dave Patriarch. And the week after that, we'll take a break as we go over the August long weekend. I thank you all for joining us for Meet the Masters of Insurance this week. And we look forward to seeing you again next Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time for the 26th webinar in the Meet the Masters of Insurance webinar series. Thank you, Bob Gould.